Hello, and welcome to PSO2 NGS. The world of NGS is massive and exploring Alpha can be a very daunting experience. Many important gameplay elements are hidden through a multitude of menus, or may not appear important at a glance. I'll be guiding you through all of them as best as I can. This guide will be split into 3 sections: early game, mid-game, and endgame. If you're a new player, I recommend watching from start to finish, but if you're a returning player, feel free to skip to the mid-game portion of the video. There will be a lot of information presented throughout the video, so I recommend pausing and rewatching sections you might have trouble following. Alternatively, feel free to leave a comment with a question if you have any. I'm terminally online, so it shouldn't take long for me to reply. Before we start, however, there is something very important to note. NGS is a live service game, and as such, things are always changing. If something I say in this video becomes outdated, I'll pin a comment down in the description explaining what has changed. Make sure to check before watching this video. So, you've just gotten into NGS. First things first, what class are you going to play? NGS has 10 classes to choose from. Unlike most MMOs, there is no holy trinity at play. Everyone is a damage dealer, so you can choose any class you want. You can also swap classes at any time, so feel free to experiment. Hunter is more of a bruiser class. Hunters have access to big swords, partisans, and wired lances, and they take reduced damage from enemy attacks. Their gameplay gimmick, Hunter Arts Avenger, allows them to gain extra damage when performing photon arts, when an enemy attacks them. Photon arts are this game's name for special attacks. Fighter is a high-risk, high-reward class. Fighters have access to twin daggers, knuckles, and double sabers. Their gameplay gimmick, Overload, allows them to become extremely vulnerable for a short period of time, but they dish out heavy damage during that time. Ranger is a ranged support class. Rangers have access to rifles and launchers. Their gameplay gimmick is Blight Rounds. It's an enemy debuff they can apply to tagged body parts, which will allow the entire party to deal extra damage to that body part. Gunner is a stylish ranged class. Gunners have access to twin machine guns and rifles, though they mostly focus on machine guns. Their gameplay gimmick, Chain Trigger, allows them to build up a chain counter, then transform that counter into a strong damage buff. Force is your standard mage class. Forces have access to rods and talus. They mainly focus on dealing the most amount of damage they can with elemental techniques, which is this game's name for spells. Their gameplay centers more around managing resources. As a result, they're a slower and a more relaxing class to play. Tector is a melee support class. Tectors have access to wands and talus. They are more of a battle mage type class, focusing on melee attacks and using techniques every now and then when applicable. Their party buff, Shifta/Deban, increases a variety of stats and can make tough situations a lot easier. The following classes can't be picked during character creation, but they'll become available as soon as you beat the prologue. Braver is a melee/ranged hybrid class. Bravers have access to katanas and bullet bows. Bravers excel at using both of their weapons, depending on the situation, and can dish out some high damage with their counter attacks. You'll really feel like a samurai with this class. Bouncer is a melee/tech hybrid class. Bouncers have access to jet boots and soaring blades. Unlike Braver, Bouncers are more encouraged to stick to one weapon at a time, but this doesn't stop them from dealing some heavy damage while applying a debuff that stuns enemies quicker. Waker is a melee burst damage class. Wakers only have access to harmonizers. Their gameplay centers around resource management and building towards those big damage numbers. Stylistically, it is designed around summoning familiars to fight in your stead, so if you like pet classes in other MMOs, there you go. Finally, Slayer is a melee crit damage class. Slayers only have access to gun blades. They're able to deal a crazy amount of damage and have a high crit rate, so if you like seeing consistent big numbers, this is the class for you. Gunblade photon arts are unique when compared to other classes. They change behavior depending on if you are moving your movement stick or not. Once you pick a class, you should focus on the story. This will help familiarize you with many game mechanics, how to fight, how to evade attacks, etc. Furthermore, the story gives you enough EXP to carry you to the level cap, so you don't need to grind at all. After beating the prologue, you will be introduced to one of many avenues for players to obtain free cosmetics. You might have been able to tell from the character creator, but fashion is a big part of the PSO2 experience. Once per day, you will be able to draw a single free SG scratch ticket. This scratch features a variety of story character items as well as some popular items from classic PSO2, recreated for the NGS graphics. Some of the best cosmetics can be gathered from the SG scratch, like my hairstyle for example. Additionally, you will gain access to special scratch tickets. These are NGS's version of the fun scratch from classic PSO2 and are rewarded through gameplay. They also offer new cosmetic items, as well as some helpful items to make weapon and armor enhancement easier. During your journey, you will be rewarded special goodies at certain points in the story. These will be very valuable when building your first endgame-ready weapon. You can view these goodies in advance from this menu. Continue with the story and you will be introduced to cocoons. These are training facilities scattered all across Halpha, and completing them rewards you with skill points, which you can spend on new skills. It's important to seek these out to improve your combat prowess, but for now we want to focus on the story. After you clear your second cocoon, you will receive a set of Renaisa weapons and armor. This equipment set will be very helpful since they cost very little to upgrade. You should use the opportunity to test out all 10 available classes now, and see if any of them suit your fancy. In Central City, you can swap your class at the class counter. It's the building closest to Central Cannon. Renaisa weapons can be equipped at level 1, so you have a weapon for each class to play around with. In order to familiarize yourself with the classes, I recommend talking to the class master NPCs. These are all positioned in Central City, south of the Ryuger device, and will help you learn the class of your choice. You don't have to worry about how you spend your skill points in this game. NGS allows you to freely reallocate points. So, even with your currently limited resources, you can move skill points from one weapon to the next and get an idea of how all of them play. Eventually, you will unlock the subclass system. This system allows you to use any weapon associated with that class and skills, assuming they're not labeled as main class only. If you're not interested in a subclass weapon, you should still consider each class's unique passive abilities. Whichever subclass you pick is up to you. If you play Force or Tector, I highly recommend the classes to subclass each other, as the two of them have some good synergy with compound techniques. Alternatively, Bouncer is also a very synergetic subclass for both Force and Tector. As a new player, you will receive 15 days of material storage. NGS has several premium storage spaces, but material storage is special. You can enable a setting in the menu to automatically send material items to your material storage. This will significantly reduce inventory bloat and is by far the most important storage you can obtain through gameplay. You will receive another 2 weeks of material storage once per month simply for logging in. So the first 45 days are essentially completely free. Once you run out, you'll be able to purchase more from the Star Gem shop. You will also unlock dailies, weeklies, and the Mission Pass at the same time. The Mission Pass is another avenue for you to get extra cosmetic items simply by playing the game. A lot of it is locked behind the Gold Mission Pass. You can upgrade your first Mission Pass to Gold tier by finishing Lydia's side task. Later Mission Passes can be purchased from the SG shop or by buying the premium set. If you haven't already, it is a good time to consider if you'd like to join an alliance, which is this game's version of guilds. Alliances offer unique weeklies that will further help in your adventures. The Alliance Badge Shop has unique cosmetics, resources, as well as exclusive access to urgent quest triggers, which are required to play current and past urgent quests at any time you want. My Alliance, Boundless, and many other alliances would love to help new people find their way through the game world, so don't be a stranger. However, it's okay if you don't want to join any at this point. Before heading out to save Dozer in Resoul Forest, the game will teach you about multi-weapons. This is where Renaisa comes in handy since it only costs 50 Meseta to multi-weapon these weapons. You may also unlock the weapon potential. This will give you a large boost in damage, and on Renaisa weapons it's free of charge. Once you did that, set out to save Dozer, completing the first chapter of the story. Congratulations! Before we start with Chapter 2, I suggest exploring Aelio. Most important of all, I recommend searching out every cocoon and Ryuger devices that's scattered across the region. The operators even have tasks that will help you keep track of certain things. I don't want to take the joy of exploration from you, so, if you don't wish to spoil yourself the locations, skip ahead 10 seconds. For everyone else, here is my fully explored map. You may have also come across multiple red containers throughout your journey. These containers reward you with Meseta, star gems, and other useful items, but unlike green or gold containers, they don't respawn. There are about 100 of them in each region, and I recommend trying to find as many of them as you can. The resources you gain are invaluable. To make the search for them easier, make sure to activate your mag sonar. This will allow your mag to ping you whenever a red container is nearby. If you don't want to search for them on your own, check out the link in the description for a detailed location breakdown. Also, you probably noticed it, but certain story NPCs show up around Aelio and want to chat with you. These are optional cutscenes, and aren't necessary to enjoy the story, but I strongly recommend watching them as they will enrich the narrative a lot. I'd also like to explain Urgent Quest real quick. These spawn randomly every few hours, and very often require you to be at level cap to participate. The earliest Urgent Quest you will be able to participate in will be available after clearing Chapter 2. For now, if one spawns, don't worry about them and continue exploring at your own pace. You may have noticed before, but Archie has some side tasks for you. I recommend doing those as they will reward you with Genesis points, which is NGS's version of fun points from classic PSO2. With Genesis points you mostly buy new furniture, but Archie also has her own shop where she sells items important for combat-oriented players. Here is a list of items I recommend you to focus on with your first set of Genesis points. These cubes, spheres, and augments will come in handy later when building your first real weapon and armor. You should avoid these items over here. They are either outdated or simply not worth the points right now. Another side task I strongly recommend you to pick up is Schlack's Introduction to Ordinal Tower. This quest consists of 7 combat encounters, and rewards you with some really useful items for new players. You get to play 2 ranks of the quest after beating each chapter until you beat rank 7 at the end of chapter 4. For your first 2 ranks you will be rewarded with class cubes, arms refiners, and a 7-star unit. The unit isn't important or valuable, so convert it to cash. What we're here for are the class cubes. Now, the game will want you to learn this later, but nothing is stopping you from learning it now, and it will make your journey smoother. If you head over to the class counter, you'll notice there is an add-on skill menu. Generating add-on skills will produce random skills of random levels. This will be more important once you reach mid-game, but for now it's enough if you roll 1 add-on skill for the first 6 classes. These will help you with various things in small ways, but together they add up to a rather significant power boost. We will obtain class cubes for the other 4 classes later. If at any moment you decide to swap classes, and need some extra EXP, feel free to do some of the optional tasks from Helfa's residence, or pay a visit to the various combat sectors around the world and grind away. Combat sectors have their EXP quadrupled as long as you're below level 80. Additionally, there are Liame's daily repeatable side tasks. These aren't strictly combat related and can speed up the leveling process significantly. For the second chapter in the story, we will travel to an all-new region, Retem. As soon as you arrive, Gaiden will jump scare you with new gear to equip. He will also ask you to upgrade said gear at least once. You can use your Renaisa weapons and armor as material, if you don't have anything better to use as fodder. Don't forget to level up the weapon potential to level 3. Once that's done, feel free to equip your new gear. It will last you until you reach level 65. You won't unlock any crazy features throughout Chapter 2, so go ahead and clear out the story. After you're done, you will be introduced to Ronaldine's looping tasks. These tasks are designed as an extra reward layer for participating in combat sectors. It's essentially an endless carrot on a stick that will constantly provide you with tasks to complete and reward you for it. I recommend picking these up later once you start farming combat sectors. This NPC over here will also point you towards a special kind of training facility, the Geometric Labyrinth. It's not important to clear it for any special rewards for now, but it's a fun quest you might want to try out in your spare time. It's also a very good spot to work on your evasive maneuvers. If you still struggle with evading enemy attacks, I recommend giving this facility a visit. Now that we've finished the Chapter 2 story, it's time to explore Retem and find all the cocoons. I will flash a full map again if you'd like to copy it, so skip ahead 10 seconds if you'd like to avoid it. Another thing on your checklist would be to visit the Ordinal Tower, since rank 3 and 4 have unlocked. This time you will gain Braver, Bouncer and Waker X cubes. These are especially valuable since the Bouncer add-on skill allows you to regenerate photon points while running and gliding. It's such a godsend. You might also want to revisit Aelio since completing Chapter 2 also unlocked new optional cutscenes to watch. Once you're finished, it's time to visit the frozen tundra of Kvaris. After starting Chapter 3 you will receive another task from Gaiden. This time he asks you to upgrade one augment capsule and apply any new augments onto your gear. He will also give you a bunch of capsules and materials. I recommend upgrading the Mastery capsules into Mastery 4, and replace your Might, Precision or Technique augment with a rank 4 version. This will give you a minor power boost, and make the coming chapters slightly easier to clear. Similar to Chapter 2, you won't be introduced to that many new concepts during the story, so feel free to focus on the adventures in Kvaris. After completing Chapter 3, you will be properly introduced to add-on skills. We already unlocked some basic ones and I'll teach you how to better level them up later, so let's put a pin in that for now. As with previous regions, it's time to explore Kvaris and search for all the hidden cocoons. Skip by 10 seconds if you don't want the locations spoiled. This time I'd like you to find some specific red containers while exploring Kvaris. These were recently added, and include materials needed to build our endgame weapon later. Additionally, don't forget to pay the Ordinal Tower a visit, since we've unlocked rank 5 and 6. Once you've completed everything, it's time to travel to the volcanic wastelands of Stia. Not long after starting Chapter 4, you will reach level 65. This will award you with your final set of welfare gear, the Argenti series. These weapons and units are fully maxed out, and they will be useful until you replace it with proper gear, once you reach mid-game. After clearing the Dryzen plant in the story, I recommend going back to it real quick, as we will be unlocking the final add-on skill. Go to this area over here, and search for invisible boxes. One of these will drop a unique mineral called Infernium, and you will want to take that to Stia Camp, and exchange for 2 Slayer cubes. With those cubes in hand you'll want to unlock the final add-on skill, which will increase your crit rate during down phases, and significantly help you with your DPS. If you somehow don't get a single Infernium from the boxes, you may want to visit this spot right here during bad weather, after beating Chapter 4. It will spawn a single node of Infernium for you. You can track the weather with this icon next to your minimap. After finishing Chapter 4, feel free to explore Stia for the remaining cocoons. These should be the final ones, there aren't any more after that. Skip by 10 seconds if you don't want the locations spoiled. Once you're done you should have exactly 37 skill points. Don't forget to visit the Ordinal Tower for its final rank. Beating this one will reward you with a cosmetic item, and with a title that gives you free Obsidia weapons. These aren't anything to write home about these days, but you can use them as grind fodder later. The game will also introduce you to dual quests. These however require specific gear with specific augments, so I recommend skipping them until you reach the endgame. With all of that done, it is time to beat Dark Falls once and for all. After you beat Chapter 5 you will be awarded 2.5 million Meseta. This pool of money will be invaluable when it comes to building your first real weapon. Speaking of which, congratulations! You've beaten the early game. Now it's time for what I like to call mid-game. The mid-game consists of farming and improving your gear to the point where you'll be able to participate in endgame activities. If you haven't already, it's time to make some friends and join an alliance. A new game mode is now available at the quest counter, Aelio Exploration. This quest is a time-based game mode, in which you and 7 other players spend the first half accumulating buffs until the timer runs out. During the second half you're pinned against a boss and need to defeat them using the accumulated buffs before the time runs out. The rewards increase every time the enemy loses 25% of their max HP. Be careful though, you can't die too many times before the quest fails. Paying attention to the enemy and player buffs will be a key to your success. The quests rewards you with plenty of things you can use in order to grow your character. Growth Mint is the primary soft currency of this game mode. You can exchange it in this shop over here. It features many of the rewards you can already get from the quest itself, so feel free to stock up. Additionally to Growth Mint you'll be able to get LC augments. These are slightly weaker versions of best and slot augments, and they are more than enough to tackle every piece of content in the game with. They also drop pretty much everywhere, so you'll never run out of them. Lichiel also rewards you with Tech Arts customization discs. I will explain these in a bit. While farming Lucille, you will also be awarded Genesis points. As previously mentioned, these are primarily used in order to buy furniture for this game's housing system and Archie's Genesis Points exchange shop. Before we continue with the mid-game section, I recommend you to start Chapter 6. This will introduce you to the new Starless enemies, and unlock the Tech Arts customization feature. This is where all these Tech Arts discs come into play. Tech Arts customizations allow you to level up your photon arts and techniques, and customize their behavior to your liking. Some are simple boring numbers changes, but some change the behavior of an attack entirely. I personally cover the customizations for Tector, and I guess if you're a Force, there is some overlap there, but if you play any other classes, I recommend looking around YouTube for other creators, and their take on these customizations. This will be one of many important ways to grow your character. Now it's time to get your equipment sorted out. But first, some of you may be wondering, Kathy, if I can play most of the game with Argenti weapons, why should I bother upgrading my equipment? It provides enough BP after all. Well, on one thing you're right. Argenti gives enough BP in order to play most of the content in the game. That said, the battle power stat doesn't reflect your actual power correctly. BP is additive and augments are multiplicative. This means that one stat grows at a disproportionate rate to the other, and content is balanced around your power, not your BP. So indeed, you can participate in endgame activities with Argenti. However, you will make your own life, and that of your party members more difficult by doing so. Upgrading your units to Ainea, and weapons to a 10-star weapon series will increase your overall performance by roughly 25%. Meanwhile, your BP will only increase by about 100. This gear will easily last you a full year before you'll have to consider upgrading. Most players upgrade earlier than that, but you shouldn't let the pressure get to you. In most situations, upgrading earlier only results in about 3% more power. Once a year is more than enough. As of writing of this video, you should focus on a 10-star weapon and 9-star units. You can get the units for very cheap off the player market, however they do require you to be level 81, so if you decide to swap classes you might run into issues with your units. For that reason, I generally recommend keeping your F-Tistant units as a baseline in those situations. Among the weapons, you have an option between Flugelguard, Riyar, and Zover. Flugelguard can be bought from the player shop, Riyar can be crafted with the cubes we've been already collecting, and Zover can be farmed from Aelio Exploration. I personally recommend Riyar as we're already almost there, but you could farm for Zover too, it'll just take a little bit longer. But we're still not done farming for Riyar. As previously mentioned, Archie's GP shop is one source of materials you could use to farm a Riyar weapon, but those aren't all. Any urgent quest in Kvaris, when played on its highest difficulty rank, drops materials required for a Riyar weapon. Additionally, if there is a seasonal event going on, you should check out the seasonal event shop, and see if there are any icicle cubes, or spheres available. Seasonal events usually speed up the gearing process significantly, and are generally speaking the best time periods for new and returning players to catch up with the game. Seasonal events usually happen bi-monthly, so keep that in mind. Additionally, you could farm in the Rajor Gorge exploration sector, and time extension quests. Speaking of which, time extension quests are great if you need a lot of GP in a short amount of time. They drop good amounts of items and Riyar materials similarly to Lichiel, but you're mostly gonna do them for GP. In this quest, killing enemies extends the timer, and if the timer runs out before you clear the final wave of enemies, the quest is over. The queue for them can take a while to find players, so I recommend asking a friend to run this quest together with you. 2 players will make this quest a lot smoother since the enemy layout branches out into 2 directions. I mentioned the Growthman Exchange Shop, but you should try familiarizing yourself with all the shops at this counter. The Item Recycle Exchange is a place where you replace undesired items for something a bit more useful. You can, for example, exchange duplicate SG scratch items for badges that will consume less space in your inventory, and exchange said badges later for other useful items. This exchange is also available from your menu down here in the shop category. The ARX Records Exchange uses ARX Record badges, which you can obtain from a weekly challenge in which one piece of content will be tracked for best scores, and depending on your performance you'll land on leaderboards. This exchange shop features a plethora of useful items and weapon camos, and even if you don't feel confident about your performance, I recommend participating anyway, as you get 20 badges as participation reward regardless. If you'd like to get the most out of this exchange shop, I made a small video explaining how to do that right here. Then there is the Item Exchange Kvaris shop. This is where you get your REAR weapons once you have accumulated enough cubes and spheres. I recommend ignoring all items below Blizzardium, since these are outdated rewards from the previous Kvaris region endgame. We visited the Item Exchange Stia shop before, but other than a few class cubes, and a few outdated items, it does not offer anything useful right now. Then we have the Aegis Integra Exchange shop. This is important if you'd like to make some easy money. The weapons themselves are skippable, but down here you'll find the exchange for a few augment capsules. These capsules are used in order to build some endgame augments, and are in decently high demand. You'll learn more about it in the money-making section of this video. You might not have access to many Integra stones until you get to the endgame, but I recommend focusing on Aegis souls first, as these are in highest demand. While farming exploration sectors, like Rage or Gorge, you might come across a few gigantic enemies. Giga's Strugment Exchange Shop uses Giga's Strugments dropped from those enemies. The shop itself features TechArt's customization discs, some augments, and a pretty decent amount of weapon camos. Next up is the SG Legacy Coordination Exchange Shop. This is where you exchange special badges you can acquire during certain events and campaigns for previously released hairstyles, emotes, and hand motions. You should check it out. You did get a legacy badge or two just for completing the main story. Second to last we have the Special Scratch Exchange Shop. This shop offers a lot of previously released items from the Special Scratch item lineup. And lastly we have the Dread Scale Exchange Shop. This shop is very barren right now, with the only worthwhile item being the unique Omni TechArts customization disc. This disc is required in order to unlock the final level of your TechArts customization. You can ignore the rest of the weapons as these aren't worth investing into, nor are expensive at the player market. Now that we've covered all exchange shops, and which quests they tie into, you can grind ahead. Regardless of what you do, you're almost there to get your first 10-star weapon. While farming quests, you will also be rewarded with Gold Prim Sword 2, and Gold Prim Armor 2, as well as some Endymio capsules. These are very important in order to actually grind your weapon, so make sure to pick these out from the reward screen after a quest. Once you gathered all the materials you need, pick the REAR weapon you'd like to have in the Kvaris Exchange Shop, and let's head to the item lab with it. First of all, you'll want to limit break to level 80. This will require some arms refiners, but we should have enough of these just from the exchange shops I told you to visit. Additionally, don't forget to level up your weapon potential to level 6. This will require some minerals, X cubes, and photon chunk 2A and B. Now that the limit is broken, select your Gold Prim Swords or Endymio capsules and grind away. If you want it to go faster, feel free to use the great success rate boosters you got from special scratches. Once we've reached max level, apply these LC augments, plus an augment corresponding to your damage type. Weapons with an orange icon want Might 4. Blue icons want Precision 4. Yellow icons want Technique 4. Lastly, exchange your X cubes for this item over here, and generate a preset skill on your weapon. Any fixa is better than none, and if you get a poopy fixa, like Fixa Abandak level 1, then feel free to reroll to something else. And with that, you have your first endgame weapon. Congratulations! But wait, we're not done. You still need units. Repeat the same process with units as with a weapon, but luckily here you don't need to get them all the way to plus 80. You can stop at plus 61. This is the level required to unlock all augment slots. You can, if you want, grind it further, but it's not mandatory. It will make your life easier though. Continue with applying augments on your units and a preset skill and voila. You're ready to enter endgame quests and continue to grow your character. Welcome to the endgame of New Genesis. The main bread and butter of endgame in NGS are the major target suppression quests. These are difficult boss fights you can attempt with up to 4 players, and have a relatively strict time and incapacitation limit. They will put your knowledge of the game to the test. If your character is a little bit too weak yet, you shouldn't worry, as there are still some areas where you can always grow your character and grow as a player. One way you're going to want to grow your character is by maximizing add-on skills. For this, be on the lookout for titles that reward master cubes. Some of them can be gained very easily with friends, so feel free to ask them for help. Generating add-on skills with 5 of these will force them to be max level at a mild meseta cost. There is still a little bit of RNG involved with getting the correct add-on skills, but first and foremost, you should focus on getting all of the main skills to level 20. In the GP shop, you can buy 5 master shards a week, and once you have 10, you can exchange them for a single master cube. All of your skills will be level 20 in no time. You could also replace all your LC augments with their real versions. This will be a massive meseta sink though, and it's not necessary to do as long as you have good gear, which you should have by this point. If you want a decent challenge, I recommend visiting the Geometric Labyrinth. Rank 2 unlocked after beating Chapter 4, and it's much shorter than Rank 1, while offering very challenging opponents back to back. You can play around with the difficulty modifiers to make your experience harder or easier, and it's the perfect quest to work on your parry timings and evasive maneuvers. Upon clearing Rank 2 for the first time, you are even rewarded with 5 Aegis Integra. Another way of growing as a player is by simply watching YouTube. A lot of us content creators are dedicated to certain classes, or simply share generic tips for quests that apply to all classes. I myself specialize on Tector, and some of that knowledge carries over to Force as well. However, I wouldn't be able to give you any usable tips on other classes, so I strongly recommend looking around YouTube for other creators, and their input on their favorite classes. But, to grow your character you'll also need money. How do you get money in this game? Well, the quickest answer would be to visit the item lab, and check out this menu right here. It will list all of the endgame augments, and what you need to create them. Then you can sell these augments on the player shop for some decent pocket change. This is also where the Aegis Integra exchange shop comes into play. By farming Aegis Integra stones, you can exchange them for capsules needed to make Halfanal. To get these Aegis Integra stones, you need to farm either Dark Falls Solace or Dark Falls Aegis. Both of these falls have easier urgent quest versions of their fights, so you might want to focus on them if an urgent quest spawns. A lot of these augment capsules will require you to farm the previously introduced dual quests. These however require you to build extra gear that gives you insane bonuses when playing that quest. So, it will be a meseta sink at first, but you'll start to quickly make that money back. The augment capsules that don't require you to farm dual quests will often require you to farm minerals. Amongst them all, Photon Quartz is easily the most important one. I previously made a video covering my daily routine for minerals, feel free to check it out. Another part of the endgame in this game is fashion. A large portion of this game is dedicated to make the best looking character, and taking screenshots with them. And with a character creator this powerful, it's really hard to blame anyone for spending hours in the salon. It's also the quickest way to become broke again, unless of course you play a T1 character. Fashion is also this game's version of legal real money trading. You can buy AC scratch tickets, get random items out of them and sell them on the player market for meseta. But I personally don't recommend doing that, unless you have really deep pockets. Luckily, a lot of really good fashion pieces can be obtained for free. I already covered the free daily SG scratch tickets, but let's say you'd want to scratch more. For that you'd need star gems, but how do you get them? Well, I already mentioned a few sources throughout the video. The ARC's Record Badge Exchange features some SG you can get on a weekly basis. Scratching the special scratch can often reward you with a hefty chunk of gems. Liking other people's lookbooks can reward you with 5 gems a day, or 10 gems if you're a premium player. Giving people kudos on their creative spaces does the same thing. Then there are these weekly tasks which mostly ask of you to either do your daily tasks, or participate in endgame activities. And the biggest SG mine of them all, the titles. There are titles for practically all types of content, so you'll be gaining a lot of SG simply from playing the game. The previously mentioned seasonal events often come packed with star gems as well. If you join an alliance, you'll have access to Tim's Alliance Badge Exchange Shop. Here you can get some weekly SG, as well as some easy-to-get Genesis points. Additionally, you can always play Classic PSO2, which has 9 years worth of content to explore, and even without the SG rewards, it's worth playing that game in its own right. However, covering that game is beyond the scope of this video. I strongly recommend watching 124 Sans videos, as they are created with the hindsight of Classic PSO2's current state, and their channel is dedicated to Classic PSO2. You might have noticed that finding Classic PSO2 content on YouTube is kind of difficult these days. That's because YouTube's algorithm doesn't understand the difference between Classic PSO2 and PSO2 NGS. It's kind of a mess. I'm not gonna police you on what you should or shouldn't spend your SG on. Those are your resources after all. But whatever you do not buy augments or class cubes from the SG treasure shop. Not only are these extremely outdated, but also heavily overpriced. And with that, you should have no issue finding your way through the game. I've put a lot of work into this guide, so I hope you've found it helpful. If you'd like to support this channel, feel free to like and subscribe. If you'd like to directly support me, you can join my channel members like these wonderful people right here. This video was edited using a new PC I bought recently. Hopefully the jump in quality will be noticeable to my longtime viewers. I plan to continue spend the money I get from you guys back into the channel. Hopefully my second year on YouTube will be even better than the first one. As always, thank you for watching, guys. I love every single one of you. Take care.